Hello, this is Ariana Antonio for SDI 1305, and this is my project for review. So this week was definitely hard, although it could have been harder, I suppose. It was nice to not to get to kind of break away from the story format, to be given problems and have to just figure out how to solve them. Definitely a different method of thinking for using the code, or at least expanding on the thinking that we should have been using so far. And in terms of ones that were harder, I chose to, since we had to do at least six, I chose to do two of each kind so that I could get a kind of broad array of the type of code that I was trying to create. I would say that the array ones were harder than I expected. I mean, I could tell that they weren't going to be easy. I wasn't trying to pick the easiest ones necessarily, but pushing through the array and then figuring out the parameters and that sort of stuff to make the arrays work, I've found to be difficult. Most specifically, finding the total number was hard in a function, trying to get through a series of numbers and strings and just add the numbers and actually add them and not concatenate. I know I didn't say that right. Was difficult and took me quite a bit of time to figure out. But I think I got it to work in the end. Instead of having pickle and 13 in there, I just got a added number. Easier, pretty much. I didn't have much problem with the string and number functions. I found that I got through actually those four within like an hour and pretty much spent the rest of the night on the last two and then the flowchart. Although I still didn't, completely do one right and had to go back and change my code a bit in the trying to find a phone number. But those were still, kind of easy breezy, and it was nice to get through those quickly so I could focus on the harder ones for a while. I would say that this continues to build on the weeks in terms of learning more functionality, more methods and properties, and what we can do with those. So it sort of expands what we can do, and but continuing to make sure that we're tying them together correctly in terms of the logic and flow and all that sort of stuff. And doing similar stuff with the flowchart. So flowchart was a lot easier to make this week. It was a little less complicated, but also after having sort of the practice of last week, it was a little less intimidating to put together. And in terms of preparing for the future, it was again just more logic and more complicated logic, and watching the videos and stuff with refactoring your logic and figuring out how to make things simpler, even though it may seem more complicated. I'm sure logic and that sort of flow would help with any programming language, not just JavaScript. So obviously that's very important. I had a couple of aha moments this month regarding return functions, return calls or something within a function, I guess. There were a couple of times where I could swear my code was right and it should be working and it just wasn't working. And after, a lot of time being frustrated and looking at it, finally moving stuff around and figuring out I was returning something just on the slightly wrong line. If I just moved it down a line, suddenly everything worked, or, that sort of thing. So there were a couple of moments that specifically followed returns, and just going, oh crap, that's why this isn't working. That's in the wrong spot. And then suddenly everything works, and I get really excited and scream at my screen because I'm just so happy to have it figured out. I didn't talk specifically too much this month with fellow students, but in general, it was nice in the live classes having other students there, just kind of knowing that I wasn't the only person with these questions and who needed help and who was struggling and that sort of stuff. So it was just kind of a nice support network, I guess you could say, just having other students kind of learning all this stuff and going through it at the same time. In terms of teaching things other than code, pretty much just problem solving. I do actually enjoy problem solving type logic puzzles and that sort of stuff, but thinking about things in a different way, and working around them and not necessarily being given the answer, being given you need to work this out yourself, was helpful and will continue to be helpful in the future. And I definitely wonder all the time how things are coded when I look at websites, not, because how does all of this stuff create something incredibly dynamic, like Google, it's just that sort of stuff. All this is so simple and so early that it just is kind of mind blowing how somehow these little bits of code and that sort of stuff just add up to something much more complicated, and it worries me about the type of code I'm going to have to look at to create something so complicated, but I'm excited to learn how to do it at the same time. So that is my project for review, and I actually had a great time this month learning JavaScript, even when I was bashing my head against my keyboard. Thanks so much. Bye.